10 Years Later Part 2. Chapter 7, The Boy with His Eyes. The morning sun poured into the penthouse like liquid gold, flooding every inch of the Cross Palace in light too pure for the secrets it housed. Sophie stood at the breakfast counter in the open-concept kitchen, stirring honey into her coffee like her life wasn't quietly spiraling. She wore silk pajamas and a robe tied too tightly. A deep furrow pressed into her brow as she watched the digital clock tick closer to 7:45 a.m. Leo padded in a minute later, dressed in his new school uniform, a navy blazer with crisp lapels and a little embroidered lion on the breast pocket. Dimitri's personal tailor had altered the entire set overnight. Of course he had. Sophie crouched down, brushing his curls aside to adjust his collar. "You okay?" she asked gently. Leo nodded, then added, "Will you walk me down?" "Of course. Always." But when the elevator chimed in the foyer, it wasn't the car she had called, it was his. Dimitri stepped out. He was dressed for war, black on black three-piece suit, dark tie, black cufflinks. Power radiated from him in waves, like smoke from a fire not yet put out. His gaze scanned the room and landed, with full force, on the boy standing beside Sophie. And everything stopped. Leo looked up, wide-eyed. He tilted his head, curious. Unafraid. Sophie tensed, her hand tightening around Leo's shoulder. "Leo," she said softly, "this is Mr. Cross." Dimitri took a step forward. "You can call me Dimitri." Leo blinked. Like Demetrius from Shakespeare. A brief, surprised smile touched the corners of Dimitri's mouth. "Exactly like that." "Cool." Leo grinned. "I'm Leo." Like the constellation. And that was it. Like magnets drawn from separate corners of the universe, they clicked. Sophie watched, stunned, as Dimitri crouched down to Leo's height. "You like the stars?" "Yeah. Mom taught me constellations when I was little. I can find Orion with my eyes closed." Dimitri's expression softened just slightly. "I used to do the same thing with my mother. She told me stars were fire we couldn't touch. But I never liked things I couldn't hold." Leo tilted his head again, mirroring him. "So, you tried to touch them anyway?" Dimitri nodded, a shadow flickering behind his eyes. "I still do." And then it happened. The two of them just stared at each other. Not awkward. Not forced. It was a recognition. A mirror facing a mirror. Sophie felt her stomach drop. The same thick lashes. The same sculpted cheekbones. And most of all the same eyes. That piercing, unmistakable storm grey. People always said Leo had unusual eyes. That he looked intense. Fierce. Like he was born knowing too much. And now she knew why. Sophie's heart started to pound. She looked away, biting her bottom lip so hard it nearly bled. This wasn't the moment. She wasn't ready for the question that had haunted her since the day Leo was born. What if Matthew wasn't the father? What if Dimitri was? She hadn't told anyone, not even herself. She had been pregnant when she left Dimitri. Just a few weeks. She hadn't known. Not until Matthew proposed. Not until the tests. Not until the lies started to pile like silk-covered stones. She told herself Matthew was the father. It made everything simpler. Safer. Kinder. And now? Now Leo was standing in front of Dimitri, two versions of the same fire, talking about constellations like they'd known each other forever. "Wanna see my telescope?" Leo asked. Dimitri's smile deepened. "I'd love to." "No, no, no," Sophie interjected too fast, her voice trembling. "Leo, sweetie, you're going to be late for school. Remember?" Leo groaned. "But Dimitri said." "I said later," Dimitri said smoothly, standing now, towering once again. "I'll still be here when you're back." Leo brightened at that. "Promise?" Dimitri looked down at him, serious now. "I never make promises I don't keep." Leo beamed. And in that moment, Sophie saw it. Not just the resemblance. Not just the charm. She saw the bond. Unspoken. Instantaneous. Unbreakable. Like blood calling to blood. The door closed behind Leo, and silence bloomed in the foyer. Dimitri turned to her, his expression unreadable now. Sharpened. Controlled. Sophie stood still, her breath shallow. "Does he know?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. Not threatening. Just sure. "You're a good liar, Sophie. But you should know by now I see everything." Sophie's voice cracked like porcelain. "He's mine. He's ours," Dimitri said, cold fire in his voice. "And whether you're ready to admit it or not, he already knows." She said nothing. Could say nothing. Because in the silence between them, a truth had awakened. And it was wearing his eyes. Chapter 8, Late Night Scandals. It began with a flash. Then another. And another. 3 nights after Leo met Dimitri, Sophie stepped out of the Carlisle Hotel after a discreet dinner with a former colleague, someone who might have had a freelance opportunity, and she was greeted not by the quiet air of Manhattan twilight, but by paparazzi. They came like a swarm of bees drunk on blood and glamour. "Sophie. Sophie Belmont. Look here. How long have you been back in the city? Are you living with Dimitri Cross? Was your marriage real or a cover-up? Did he buy you that necklace? Show us the pendant." Sophie froze mid-step, her pulse slamming like a hammer against her throat. Her black dress suddenly felt too tight, too thin. The pendant felt like it weighed 100 pounds against her chest. The camera bulbs exploded again. She shielded her face, trying to step backward, but the sidewalk was too narrow. There was no way out. Until there was. A black car. Sleek. Aggressive. It screeched to a stop beside the curb. The driver's door opened, and Nico, Dimitri's head of private security, stepped out. "Ms. Belmont," he said in that calm, robotic tone that ignored chaos entirely. "Mr. Cross is expecting you." The paparazzi howled louder at that. "She's been with him. Mystery widow exposed. Is the heir to the Cross fortune her son?" Nico opened the door. Sophie didn't hesitate. She slipped inside, breathing hard, the door slamming shut behind her. The noise vanished. The car smelled like leather and tension. The windows were tinted pitch black, cutting out the world. She didn't need to ask who had sent the car. She already knew. Up in the penthouse, the air was sharper than usual. Like a storm had just passed or was about to arrive. Dimitri stood at the bar, a glass of something dark in his hand. He was in shirt sleeves, no tie, hair still damp from a shower. Calm, as always. But the way his jaw flexed when he turned to face her, that was the tell. "Nice dress," he said flatly. "Terrible restaurant. You set them on me, didn't you?" she snapped, stepping in. "Those photographers. That car. You baited them." He lifted a brow. "You think I'd send vultures to devour you in the street? You could. You've done worse." He sipped. Silent. Then he tossed something onto the coffee table. A tablet. The screen was already on. The front page of New York Confidential filled the screen. Breaking: Billionaire Dimitri Cross spotted with mystery widow. Who is she? Subheadlines scrolled underneath. Is the reclusive Sophie Belmont back and in the arms of her former flame? Sources claim the two once had a torrid romance in Europe. And now she's living in his Fifth Avenue penthouse with a child. Sophie read it once. Then again. Her skin prickled with rage. Her photo was everywhere, stepping out of the car, laughing over coffee on the Cross Terrace, walking with Leo near Central Park. "I told you I didn't want this," she said through her teeth. "I told you I came back quietly. For Leo. Not for this circus." "I know," Dimitri said, eerily calm. "But this isn't my doing." Then whose? A long silence. He set his drink down. Slowly. Then he walked over to a drawer in the sideboard, opened it, and retrieved a red folder. Slim. Plain. He handed it to her. Sophie opened it. Inside photographs. Old. Grainy. But unmistakable. Her. Matthew. And Dimitri. The three of them in public. At events. On balconies. Stolen shots, from angles no normal photographer could have taken. Someone's been collecting these for years, Dimitri said. Building a timeline. Tracking your moves. Sophie's blood ran cold. Why? He stepped closer. His voice dropped to a murmur. Because someone's digging into your past. Hard. And not for gossip. She dropped the folder. Who? I don't know yet. But whoever they are, they're good. They buried the source trail. Even my tech guys can't find the first upload. She looked up at him, panic rising. Is Leo in danger? Dimitri's eyes went cold. Not while he's under my roof. He paused. Then added, and Sophie, don't lie to yourself. Your past isn't just following you. It's hunting you. That night, she lay awake in the darkness, listening to the city whisper outside her windows. Her phone kept buzzing with alerts, Google mentions, gossip sites, anonymous emails. One had only a subject line. How well did you really know your husband? She deleted it, but it echoed in her mind like a dare. Because the truth was, she hadn't known Matthew's last year. Not really. And now? Now the ghosts were stirring. And someone wanted her secrets burned to the ground. Chapter 9, Secrets in the Study. Rain whispered against the windows of the Cross penthouse that afternoon, a soft percussion on glass as the city brooded beneath thick clouds. The entire world felt muffled, like it was holding its breath. Sophie had left for a brief consultation meeting at Cross Enterprises downtown, reluctantly trusting Dimitri's security staff to watch Leo. She needed 10 minutes to breathe, to think, to feel like herself, not just a mother, or a woman tangled in scandal, but someone who once ran entire branding teams across Europe. Leo, meanwhile, was supposed to be in the family lounge working on a school project. He was not. He had wandered off. Again. The bodyguard watching him, a bored ex-marine named Troy, had looked away for 30 seconds, just long enough for Leo to disappear down the private corridor labeled Private, D Cross Only. Leo moved like a whisper. Fast and curious, like always. The hallway was quiet and dim, its walls lined with minimalist black and white photographs, Dimitri's childhood estate in Greece, his first car, and a haunting portrait of a woman who looked strikingly like Leo. At the end of the hall was a matte black door with no handle. Just a silver panel. Leo blinked at it, then touched it. To his surprise, the door hissed open. Later, no one could explain how. Dimitri swore he hadn't programmed it that way. But Leo had already slipped inside. The study was the one room Sophie had never entered. Dimitri had kept it locked, hidden away like a sacred vault. And now, Leo stood inside it, eyes wide, heart pounding with the thrill of discovery. Dark mahogany walls. A Persian rug stretched wall to wall. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves surrounded a massive obsidian desk. And behind it, under the weight of soft golden light, was a leather armchair turned slightly toward the rain-streaked window. But what caught Leo's attention wasn't the room. It was the painting. A tall oil canvas mounted above the fireplace. His mother. Painted in muted tones, wind-swept hair and bare shoulders, her gaze distant but full of fire. Leo stepped closer. There beneath the fireplace mantel a small metal panel was embedded in the wall. He pressed it. A mechanical click answered him. Part of the wall shifted. A hidden safe. Slightly ajar. Almost like it had been waiting. Leo reached in. Inside, he found a stack of photographs. A bundle of aged letters wrapped in black silk. and a manila envelope. He sat on the rug, the storm outside forgotten. The photos came first: his mother and Dimitri in places he didn't recognize, laughing on a boat, holding hands at sunset. A blurred kiss in front of a cathedral. His eyes narrowed. He flipped to another. His mother. In Tuscany. Her dress whipped by wind, Dimitri's arm around her waist. She looked younger. Lighter. Then he opened the envelope. It was thicker than it looked. Inside, yellowed paper. Official. A marriage license. Leo squinted at the names. Spouse A, Dimitri Constantine Cross. Spouse B, Sophie Marianne Belmont. The date, 10 years ago. 10 years. Before he was born. Leo stared at it, unmoving. His hands didn't shake. His heart didn't race. It was like his brain simply adjusted. I always felt it. He thought of the man who used to read to him, Matthew Belmont. Quiet, kind, patient. But not like this. Not like Dimitri. He thought of how Dimitri had looked at him. How it felt familiar. He put the license down and picked up one of the letters. Dimitri's handwriting, sharp, angular. Sophie. I would burn this city for you. I would bleed for you and call it devotion. You don't belong to the world. You belong to me. If you ever run again, I will find you. Not because I'm cruel, but because I can't survive another version of my life without you in it. Yours. Always. D. Leo exhaled slowly. Later, Sophie returned. She found Leo curled up on the leather chair, the marriage license folded neatly on his lap. Her breath caught. Leo. He looked up, calm. Why didn't you tell me? Sophie's knees buckled, and she crossed the room, heart pounding. Leo, where did you get that? You weren't supposed to. Is he my real dad? Leo asked softly. Sophie froze. There were 1,000 ways to lie. But none of them could stand in the face of his eyes. Dimitri's eyes. Yes, she whispered. He is. Leo said nothing. Then, to her astonishment, he smiled. I already knew. From the hallway, unseen, Dimitri watched them. He didn't speak. He just stood there, in the shadows of his past, as his son finally claimed his place in the empire built from secrets. Chapter 10, The Ghost of Her Husband. Grief doesn't always come with crying. Sometimes it arrives in silence, like a cold draft slipping under a locked door, finding you when you thought you'd finally moved on. That's what it felt like for Sophie as she stared at the marriage license Leo had uncovered in Dimitri's hidden study. It had been there for years, preserved like some kind of secret relic. A piece of history rewritten. A truth she hadn't wanted to face, not fully, not back then, not now. But the worst part wasn't the paper, or the look in her son's eyes when he realized his entire life had been shaped around a false name. The worst part came after, in the quiet hours of the night, when Dimitri appeared behind her in the penthouse library. She was standing near the window, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her reflection fractured by raindrops. Tell me everything, she said, without turning around. No more secrets. Dimitri's voice was low. Are you sure? Sophie turned, and her eyes were sharp. Don't insult me. Not now. He walked toward her, slow and deliberate, and for the first time since she'd returned to New York, he looked wounded. Not angry. Not smug. Just, raw. I never hated Matthew, Dimitri said. But I never trusted him, either. She swallowed hard. Why? Dimitri picked up a bottle of scotch from the sideboard, poured 2 glasses. Set one in front of her. Didn't push it. Because he wasn't just some finance guy with good manners. He worked for a group of investors that tried to break Cross International from the inside. Quietly. Strategically. I didn't know at first. He came in clean. Too clean. Sophie's stomach twisted. "You're lying," she whispered. "No," Dimitri said. "I'm finally telling the truth." He pulled a leather-bound file from the bookshelf. Tossed it onto the desk. It landed with a hard thud. Sophie opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, pages of transaction records, offshore accounts, encrypted emails. A network of shell companies. All traced back to a consortium that had tried to leverage Dimitri's company stock through backdoor channels, and Matthew Belmont's name was on all of them. "You married a man who worked with people trying to bleed me dry," Dimitri said. He smiled. "In your face. In mine." And the entire time, he was building a quiet little empire out of Cross money. Sophie stepped back, as if physically struck. No. He was decent. He was kind. Was he? Dimitri's voice was suddenly colder. Or did he just look safe after me? She flinched. "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe I needed something that wasn't fire and madness. Maybe I was scared." Dimitri stepped forward. "You should have been." Sophie's heart pounded in her chest. "But I didn't know," she insisted. "If he was involved in anything like that, he kept it from me." "I believe you," Dimitri said. "But that doesn't change what he did." Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you were grieving a man you thought loved you," he said, softly now. "I wasn't going to take that away from you." "Not then." She looked down at the file again. At the cold, unfeeling numbers. The money trails. The manipulation. And she realized something. Her marriage, her attempt at a safe life, had been built on sand. Not just lies. Betrayals. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Did he know about Leo?" Dimitri didn't answer right away. "I think he suspected," he said finally. "But he didn't push. He had more to gain pretending Leo was his." Her knees nearly buckled. The late-night arguments. The cold silences. The tension she'd chalked up to stress and work. The way Matthew had clung to her after Leo's birth like she was a shield, not a wife. Was it guilt? Was it fear of what Dimitri would do if he found out? Sophie sat down, her fingers gripping the edge of the desk. "My whole marriage was a transaction." Dimitri didn't disagree. And that was worse than anything he could have said. The next morning, Sophie found a small envelope slid beneath her bedroom door. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A transcript of a phone call. Matthew Belmont. To, unnamed party. Date, 6 months before his death. If she ever finds out the boy is Cross's, I'm done. She'll go back to him. I'll lose everything. He doesn't just want her. He'll bury me. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "You never really left me. He just got in the way." D. Sophie dropped the paper, hands trembling. Matthew's ghost wasn't haunting her anymore. He was unraveling. Chapter 11, Kiss Me Like You Hate Me. The sky broke open over Manhattan just after 5. Rain poured in silver sheets, sudden and furious, pounding the pavement with the same kind of raw intensity Sophie felt coiling inside her. It was the kind of storm that made the city blur, the kind that drowned everything soft and exposed what was real underneath. And Sophie Belmont was done hiding. The secrets Dimitri had shown her, the truth about Matthew, the whispered admissions in those files and transcripts, everything inside her had reached a boiling point. The facade of calm, of control, cracked like glass under pressure. She didn't even grab an umbrella. She stormed out of the penthouse in a black trench coat, eyes blazing, heels slamming against the marble lobby floor. The doorman tried to call after her. One of Dimitri's security staff flinched forward. She ignored them all. She knew exactly where he'd be. Dimitri Cross was outside. Standing beneath the towering awning of the Cross building, half-sheltered, one hand shoved into his pocket, the other holding his phone to his ear. He didn't see her until she was 2 steps away. She slapped the phone out of his hand. Hard. It clattered onto the wet sidewalk. He blinked. Then very slowly looked up at her. Soaked from the rain. Hair plastered to her cheekbones. Eyes filled with fury and heartbreak. She looked like a goddess struck by lightning. Do you feel powerful now? She snapped. Do you sleep better knowing everything I loved was a lie? His jaw tensed. I didn't destroy your marriage, Sophie. He did. You let me live inside that lie for 10 years. Her voice cracked. You had proof documents, audio, photographs, and you let me bury myself with him. I didn't owe you the truth, Dimitri said coolly. Not after the way you left. You think this is about how I left, she hissed. This is about you manipulating me from the shadows. You knew about Leo. You knew everything. And you let me fall apart anyway. He stepped forward. You think I let you? You think watching you disappear into that man's arms didn't kill me? Sophie stood her ground. You don't get to claim heartbreak, she said. You had your empire. Your women. Your headlines. You moved on. His voice dropped. I never moved on. The rain fell harder, a sheet of sound between them. Cars honked in the distance. Somewhere, thunder cracked across the sky. But all Sophie could see was him. Wet shirt clinging to him like a second skin. Hair slicked back. That fire in his eyes, the same one he wore the night she first left him, the night she broke both their hearts and ran for safety. I loved you, she said, quietly now. And you were a wildfire. You burned everything in your path. I was just another casualty. He stared at her. And then, he spoke low and guttural. I was your wildfire. You lit the match and then ran. You want to blame me for everything? Fine. I'll take it. But don't you ever lie about what we had. She turned to go. But he grabbed her wrist tight. And for one heartbeat, they stood there, rain dripping from their eyelashes, breathing the same shattered breath. You're still mine, he said. Even now. Even after him. Even after everything. Let me go, she said. But she didn't pull away. Tell me you didn't miss me, he said. Tell me you didn't think about me every time you kissed him. Every time you woke up alone. Every time your son looked at you with my eyes. Her lips parted but no sound came out. Because he was right. And he knew it. And in the next breath, Dimitri crushed his mouth to hers. It was not a kiss of forgiveness. It was a kiss made of fury, guilt, longing, and years of unspeakable hunger. His hands tangled in her rain-drenched hair, pulling her close like he'd been starving for a decade. And she kissed him back. Hard. Her fingers curled into his soaked shirt, dragging him down with her. Their mouths collided like thunder and lightning, violent and messy and desperate. The kiss had teeth. It had history. It had punishment. It said, I hate you. It said, I never stopped loving you. It said, you ruined me, and I'll let you ruin me again. When they finally broke apart, they were both gasping. He leaned his forehead against hers, eyes closed. I never stopped, he said, breath ragged. Not for a single damn second. Sophie trembled. And she realized something terrifying. Neither had she. Chapter 12, Bloodlines and Betrayal. The silence in the penthouse was a different kind now. Not comfortable. Not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that came before detonation. Sophie sat alone in the glass-walled living room, the city glittering below like a million eyes watching her unravel. Her hand trembled as she held the unsealed envelope, the one Dimitri had left on the kitchen counter with no explanation, no note, no apology. Inside it, a single sheet of paper. Clinical. Stark. Final. Paternity test result. Child, Leo Belmont. Alleged father, Dimitri Cross. Probability of paternity, 99.9997%. Sophie stared at it, numb. The words didn't move. The font was clean and professional. As if something so devastating could be handled with such bureaucracy. A sob tried to claw its way up her throat. She pushed it down. It wasn't that she didn't suspect. Somewhere in the back of her mind, maybe she always had. But seeing it, that was a different pain entirely. She had lived 7 years believing Matthew was Leo's father. Had let herself believe it, because it made things simpler. It made things safer. And now that illusion had been shattered. And Dimitri? He'd known. He'd known all along. She found him on the terrace, hands in his pockets, suit jacket tossed over a chair, his white shirt open at the collar. The night air whipped through his hair, and the city pulsed around him like a heartbeat made of steel and sin. "Why didn't you tell me?" she said, her voice low and deadly. He didn't turn around. "You didn't ask." Her blood boiled. "You arrogant! Don't," he cut in. "Don't act like this is all on me. You stole the truth from me," she shouted, stepping closer. "You watched me raise him. You watched me mourn Matthew. You watched me lie to my own son every day while you sat there in your tower and played God. I gave you space," he snapped. "I gave you peace. You ran from me, Sophie. I didn't chase you because I knew you needed to believe the world was safe." "And what about Leo?" she shot back. "You don't think he had the right to know who his father was?" Dimitri turned now, slowly, his jaw clenched so tightly she thought it might crack. "I was protecting him," he said. "No," she hissed. "You were controlling him." "Controlling me?" The rain from earlier had dried, but the wind still howled between the buildings. Her hair whipped around her face like something wild. She looked furious. She looked beautiful. And she looked absolutely betrayed. "Do you know what I feel right now?" she asked, voice shaking. "I feel like I never had a single real choice in my life. I thought I was doing the right thing marrying Matthew, giving Leo a stable life. But it was all a lie. He wasn't even." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her palm to her mouth. "I would have loved him anyway," she whispered. "I never doubted that," Dimitri said softly. "And you?" She looked up at him, eyes red. "You just waited. Like a wolf in the dark." "I waited," he said, stepping forward, "because I knew he'd come to me eventually. Blood doesn't lie." Her hands curled into fists. "And what about me? Did you ever think I deserved the truth?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She could see it on his face. Yes. He had thought about it. And he had chosen not to tell her. 4 years. That night, she tucked Leo into bed, kissed his forehead, and walked out of the room like her bones were made of glass. She stood at the end of the hallway, pressed her back against the wall, and let the truth wash over her like acid. Leo was Dimitri's. And Dimitri had never once let her forget it. Not with his eyes. Not with his money. Not with the way he watched that boy like he was the only good thing he'd ever created. Later, she found Dimitri in the study again. Sitting at the desk. Silent. Waiting. She tossed the test result on the table. "Next time you decide to hide something from me," she said coldly, "at least have the decency to lie about it." He stared at her for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't tell you because I knew the truth would bind you to me forever. And I wanted you to come back because you chose to, not because fate forced your hand." She turned to leave. But paused. "You never understood something, Dimitri." "What's that?" "I don't belong to fate. And I sure as hell don't belong to you." His voice followed her like smoke. "You do. You always did. And now there's blood to prove it. That's the end of this part, but trust me, the next one is even more thrilling. We drop fresh episodes every day, so don't miss out. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Because every broken heart deserves a comeback. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional romance every week. Hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of romance, redemption, and powerful love. And don't keep the drama to yourself, share this story with someone who lives for twists just like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best comeback is becoming unforgettable.